There's a new American gangsters, 'cause we speak bold, give no fuck about the haters. It can take freedom from a cold dead hands. We're locked in low for the last dance. 'Cause we're the new American gangsters, ready to die for this land.
Consistent with my real gender.
Ready to die for this land.
As is typical fashion for the chosen sperm of Tennessee, it is the holiday season, and they are trying to sneak some of the important law enforcement-related decisions under the rug before the end of the year. Now, they aren't necessarily sweeping them all under the rug, but they are hoping that all the decisions that are being made right now will be lost while you're celebrating your holidays with your family and forgetting about all the government bollocks that's been going on lately. We have the district attorney out of Warren County, Chris Stanford, has been indicted, and his mugshot is all over the internet. We're going to talk about that. We also have an exciting update, and exciting there is in quotes, about the Maegan Hall LaVergne police scandal that we're going to touch on. And this week, we also broke a school safety scandal related to a local Middle Tennessee technical college campus. We're going to cover all of that for your midweek pre-holiday Patriot Punkcast episode. But before we get started, I want to say give a quick shout out to our sponsors. The first sponsor of the day is Mid-TN Kirby. Now, the Kirby company's been around for 110 years. They've only ever been sold through a local authorized distributor. That is me in Middle Tennessee area. You can get anything that you need all in one machine: upright vacuum cleaner, hard floor mop, buffer. You've also got a mattress cleaner, sofa cushion cleaner. If you have a household chore around the house, this machine will do it. If you want to schedule a preview of one today and see how it works in your home before you make a decision to purchase, just click on the preview one today button, send us an email. I will respond directly and schedule a time to come show you the last piece of home care equipment you will ever need to buy. That's midtnkirby.com. I have a one-bedroom apartment, and I actually have two of them. So I promise I wouldn't advertise it if I didn't believe in it. When you get finished with that, go ahead and check out A State of Creative over on Facebook. They have actually just launched an email list where you can get early dibs and notifications on new furniture and projects that they have coming out. They've got a bunch of leather furniture out right now and a couple of sectionals. Make sure you check that out over on Facebook. That's A State of Creative. And at the very top of the page, there's a marketplace link where you can see all of their different selection. Check that out, A State of Creative over on Facebook. And when you get finished with that, head on over to patriotpunknetwork.com, where you can never mind the bollocks and watch previous episodes of the Patriot Punkcast. You can also click on the news tab, and that is actually where one of the stories we're going to be discussing tonight comes from: the campus safety scandal, TCAT crime numbers questioned, and an instructor threatened. You're going to hear all about that tonight. And then if you are in a position, please head on over to the support tab. There you can become a member and join our members-only Telegram channel for as little as $3 a month. Or if you just want to help us out, maybe help me buy some hairspray, you can click on the one-time tip, and $5 will buy me almost a whole can of hairspray, which lasts about 4 or 5 episodes. And as you can tell, we've been doing a lot more episodes lately, going through a lot more hairspray. We need some more hairspray funds, guys. So if you would, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. Joining me in this endeavor is my good friend and co-host, Daniel Wagner.
Hey, what's up, Mr. Matheson?
I appreciate you joining me on this pre-Christmas release. Now, it's not quite Christmas time yet. We do have one more episode coming up before the big all-day extravaganza. But
yes, sir. And I'm very upset. I'm very upset because you keep taking all the hairspray. You never leave any for me.
Well, but your beard doesn't need it to stay all fluffy.
Hey, you don't know what I need. You don't know what I need. All right.
So joining us to help us break down all of this special law enforcement mayhem is my good friend and a retired investigator from the 13th Judicial District, retired Major Terry Hembree. Hey, Terry.
Hey, good evening, guys. How you guys doing?
We are fantastic. We appreciate you joining us on such short notice. But since we had you on 2 or 3 weeks ago when the incident with Chris Stanford first unfolded to offer your insights, a lot of things have happened. And I thought with how dramatic things have gotten, it'd be a good idea to have you back on and do a follow-up for everyone. So
Great. Yeah.
what do you say we just go ahead and get right into it?
Sure.
So for those of you who don't know, District Attorney Chris Stanford, about 3 weeks ago, maybe, was involved in a shootout, but it was really just him shooting. And his statements did not quite line up with maybe all the evidence. The TBI immediately came in to investigate. And to add a little caveat, he was pursuing a suspect out of his jurisdiction. Well, this week, a news story broke, and we have this from, what is that, News Channel 4?
Yeah.
Tennessee DA charged after firing shots during arrest of triple homicide suspects. First, I have to critique this headline because that wasn't during the arrest. It was during an attempted arrest. They did arrest them a little later on, but the people drove away in this case. So it wasn't during an attempted arrest, and I think that headline is being a little bit generous. Let's really appreciate the mugshot and what it looks like seeing a district attorney in orange. Have you seen this, Terry?
I have. I saw that.
What do you make of that just shit-eating grin on his face?
Well, I thought about that. There's a couple of thoughts that I have. One is that he's enjoying the moment for some odd reason. I'm not really sure, unless he knows something that we don't know about how this thing's all going to play out. Or he may be trying to do the Trump look when Trump was. Of course, Trump had more of a scowl on his face when he had his mugshot made.
Yeah. So Daniel, since I'm blind, do you mind reading that article for us?
Oh, if I must. So this is out of Smithville, Tennessee. A Tennessee district attorney is now facing charges after he allegedly fired shots during the arrest of suspects in connection to a Warren County triple homicide in November, according to Dekalb County Sheriff Patrick Ray. The Dekalb County grand jury indicted District Attorney General Chris Stanford of McMinnville on charges of reckless endangerment and discharge of a firearm into an occupied habitation. Good Lord. So the charges stem from a shooting incident near the Bell Street Apartments in Smithville during the apprehension of 3 suspects in a Warren County triple homicide. 43-year-old DA turned himself in Monday morning and posted a $10,000 bond. Stanford is set to appear in DeKalb County General Sessions Court on January 7th. Ray said the investigation of the DA was conducted by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. But don't worry, folks. We're just investigating ourselves, and we find nothing wrong.
And all of our records are privileged, and you can't see them for 70 years. Something like that.
Where
can you read in here where the bullet? That's the important part, because I think the rest of it's going to be fluff, judging by the wording that they're using there at WSMV.
Yeah. So during the arrest, Ray said a Homeland Security agent from Warren County was injured after being hit by a vehicle trying to flee the area driven by Rose and Brookins as her passenger. Before that, the driver rammed a deputy's truck. Stanford allegedly fired shots at the getaway vehicle. Neither the vehicle nor the suspect were hit by gunfire. Brookins fled the scene, but was later apprehended.
So, does it say where the bullet came to rest?
No.
Oh, okay. So
there's another article where it does describe that.
Yeah, let me find that. But I want you to. Can you?
Yeah. Earlier in the article, it did say it discharged a firearm into an occupied habitation, is what it says.
Yeah. So I'm going to find that article, but if, can we talk about this for a minute? The guy didn't hit the car. Now, Terry, I was in the title loan industry for a long time, so I'm very, very close to being a car size expert. Would you say, in all of your years in law enforcement, that a vehicle, moving or not, is a small or a large target?
Well, certainly it's a large target. But one of the things I read, and I don't remember which news agency had published this, was that he wasn't even aiming. He was just shooting randomly without even aiming the gun, which is just, and that's just reckless. You know, when you're just shooting randomly like that and wildly, this is the type of things that happen. You put all sorts of people in danger who are in that area, not to mention, property damage you may cause by shooting in a random fashion. I don't know why he would do that. I guess maybe in the excitement, but even in the excitement, you first of all, you got to collect your thoughts and figure out what's going on before you start using deadly force, whether it's justified. And I think the same article said that Stanford was not in danger and that the vehicle was not coming in his direction. So he certainly would not have been justified in using deadly force for himself. Now, he could use deadly force to protect others, and we know that the Homeland Security officer was struck, but I'm not clear about that. And I've never seen one of the news articles make that clear about was he struck before or after the shooting took place. That's never been made clear in any of the articles that I've read.
So there's a couple of things that I really want to get your opinion on. And Daniel, I kind of want your smart ass comment towards that. Your bit of attempted humor, because I think you're going to have some good ones here.
You want me to attempt humor?
Well,
Okay.
Sometimes you attempt it and it's not necessarily, it doesn't hit, but I think you're going to have some good ones here, or at least
Look,
some.
I'm just upset that you didn't ask me about my expertise in vehicle sizes, given that I worked at the Nissan plant for 10 years. I was elbow deep in those vehicles, man.
I forgot. Maybe.
Well, there you go. He's an expert.
I'm an expert. I could hit those things with a good Lord.
Okay. So, the first things that I want to discuss is what did you notice about the charges, Terry? He was charged with, reckless discharge,
reckless endangerment and discharging a firearm into a dwelling, which I believe that charge is a misdemeanor. I'm not sure about that. I haven't looked that up and researched that. But the reckless endangerment is a felony, which, that presents a lot of problems for Stanford, because obviously he's convicted of that. He can't serve as the DA any longer, nor can he possess a gun. He'll lose his gun rights as well. So it's interesting about how this is all going to play out. Let me kind of put this in perspective for you. So what's basically happened here is Dunaway's in a pickle. DA Bryant Clyde Dunaway. He's in a pickle in the sense that he has to look like he's being transparent in this investigation, and that he's making sure that everything that's taken place is being put forward so the public has a right to inspect it and know what has really what has happened. But he has to present this to a grand jury to make it look like he's being transparent. Now, this is a trick that all the DAs do. I mean, I worked in the DA's office for over 20 years. Almost every DA that I've encountered pulled this little trick. They take these cases to the grand jury, hoping that the grand jury will kill the case, meaning that they won't indict it. And sometimes they underestimate the grand jury and they overplay their hand, and they take it under the appearance of being transparent, and the grand jury ends up indicting, and then they're stuck. And I think that's what's happened to Dunaway. He's stuck now, and he's got to figure out what he's going to do.
So there's a lot of talk online, especially when you go to the comments, and a lot of people are supporting him because the suspects that he was chasing are accused of a very violent triple homicide. There's obviously the statement that the officer was injured, and I think it would be hard to hide a fake injury. So I'm sure that there is some kind of injury. The car, I don't doubt that the car did strike the officer. But the reasons that this has resulted in a charge, I want to just make sure everyone understands, is because this man was out of his jurisdiction. Imagine if the governor of Kentucky or a sheriff's deputy in Kentucky came to Tennessee to do something. They're out of their jurisdiction. Now, if you happen to run across a wanted suspect because you were, following up on leads out of jurisdiction, I mean, I don't want to discourage people from going above and beyond the call of duty. We don't have anyone in government doing that. But I don't think that's what happened here. And when he gave his statement, so I found this article from News Channel 5 here, and it adds a little bit more. Moments after their car hit the office, and I'm guessing that means officer, during the chase, Stanford pulled his gun and shot 3 rounds toward the vehicle. As Ron White says, he missed the entire Suburban or whatever they were driving.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. But the indictment. Go ahead, Daniel.
News Channel 5, like hire an editor or something.
Wait till we get to the Maegan Hall story. I'm telling you.
Yeah, there's 2 typos right here in this one screenshot.
The indictment said Stanford's shots struck the front wall of an apartment where the bullet stopped into a living wall. Did they mean living room wall? That's what I think. When the bullet hit the apartment, the indictment said a mom and her 3 children were inside the house. It stated that there was no immediate threat to Stanford when he discharged his weapon. So what happened is what it's sounding like happened here is, and tell me if you agree with this, Terry, that DA Stanford knew that this was going to be a big case, and like a diligent individual, he went a little bit too far and went out of jurisdiction, ended up finding the individuals. People nearly got hurt, or did get hurt, the officer, and in the probably heat of the moment, he makes a bad decision, pulls his firearm, and misses.
Yeah, what it basically boils down to is it's like an adrenaline rush. I mean, there's a lot of things that's happening. He sees his vehicle, I guess, trying to leave the area. He wants to make sure that the suspect is not able to escape again, because it's my understanding they were looking for him and they may have had him cornered or whatever. And I think he was trying to be the hero and say, he's not getting away this time. I'm going to make sure he doesn't get away. And maybe he's firing the weapon in an attempt to, like a warning shot, but you don't do warning shots. That's just forbidden. You don't ever do a warning shot. Because again, I talked about this once before in the last segment, is you are responsible for every bullet that comes out of the barrel of that gun.
Yep.
Where that bullet goes, when it leaves that barrel, you're responsible for that. And if it goes to an unintended location or it's an innocent bystander, you're responsible. He should have known that. If he's been involved in any firearms training, he should have had that lecture where, they go over these liabilities and all the things that can go wrong when you're firing a weapon, especially in a crowded area like a town square.
I'm
just
really
wondering.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just wondering, which Clint Eastwood movie did he imagine himself being in during this particular scenario?
That is exactly that is exactly correct, Daniel. And I want to touch on that. Maybe you can find it. It's on my Rumble channel. I called the Post Commission. So I think where this goes from guy trying to do a good deed, getting carried away and making a mistake, or where that becomes plausible, I think where he loses that the good faith argument is when he then decides to lie. So
exactly,
we discussed this on the shows like three weeks ago, I think, where he stated that he, by law, was post certified, and that's not entirely true. You district attorneys can be post certified, but you still have to go through annual law enforcement training. He's been a district attorney for several years, and he has never been through. Okay, well, this is going to be weird watching myself, but go ahead and play the audio. You might have to skip a few seconds because I don't really want to listen to myself. No offense, guys. In his statement to News Channel 5, District Attorney Stanford claimed that he was a post-certified law enforcement officer and said that the law makes him such. We broke down with an expert last night exactly what that law requires, and part of that to verify. Here you go.
Hi, Mr. Matheson. This is Kevin Walters at the Department of Commerce and Insurance. I am responding to your records request from the weekend. I figured I'd just give you a call. We do not have any post records with regard to District Attorney Chris Stanford. He is not a post-certified officer. We have also checked all of our other records with the Law Enforcement Training Academy to see if they have anything that indicates he had firearm training, and we do not have any records that he ever had any firearm training at their facility. If you have any questions,
There you
give
go,
me a
Daniel.
call back.
So, I think it's obvious he came out, he messed up, and then he tried to cover his tracks. Do you get that sense, Terry?
Yes, and one of the things about that's important, and apparently the grand jury may not have had that information, or may not have, been able to review that, is he's given this statement to law enforcement. So that's a false statement. So that's a felony. And I'm surprised he wasn't charged with that. And also official misconduct, because even though he's outside his jurisdiction, he's clearly acting in the role of the district attorney, and he's exceeding his authority he's basically exercising authority that he does not have. He's not exceeding it. He doesn't even have that authority, which would constitute official misconduct. So I'm interested about why that was never charged in the grand jury, which leads me to believe. Now, first of all, let me explain to you about the grand jury process. When the DEA sets up the grand jury, he can go in there and he can kind of prep the grand jury about what they're going to be hearing, and he can even prep the witnesses. In fact, they always prep the witnesses before they go into grand jury. So not everything gets told to the grand jury, and this is because the DEA can suppress some information. And I'm thinking that maybe that's what happened, is some of this information got suppressed and the grand jury didn't hear it. That's why some of these other charges did not come out of the grand jury's indictment.
So there's two questions I want to ask before we move on to the Maegan Hall story, because I know that one's going to get people's heels in the air. Yeah. That was my poor attempt at humor, Daniel. You're not the only one. So in your law enforcement experience, when there is a triple homicide and then someone leaves, and I think they went to Memphis and then to Nashville and then to Smithville, and they're making that kind of a trip within 1 or 2 days, does that usually indicate some kind of drug involvement?
It could. I mean, when you have that much travel, that much movement, certainly something's happened in there. Of course, are you talking about this particular case where this murder suspect was moving around?
Yeah, my thought is because the bodies were not found for several weeks, and I'm just curious if they ended up killing somebody and then they go to Memphis and they're there, and then they go to Nashville, and the information in the original article said something about they got tips that people were either in Nashville or in Smithville right then. And just knowing, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. Look at the jail intake in any of those places out in Dekalb, Putnam, the Cumberland Plateau. There's an epidemic of drug abuse. And if you look at Memphis, there's an epidemic of drug abuse and violence. And in my experience, it's almost always drug related.
Well, like I say, it could be drug related. Of course, if the homicide has already occurred, and I don't know the sequence of events in this particular case, it could have been some sort of evasion they're trying to evade. But, it's obvious that the law enforcement was on their trail, and they're pinging their phones. And there's no doubt they're pinging their phones, and that's how they're tracking some of this information. Criminals are smart. They're not all stupid. They know when you ping their phone, so they'll turn their phone off, leave it off for a little while, and turn it back on. And when they turn it on, they leave it on just for a very short period of time because they know it's been pinged. Mm-hmm. So it's harder to track them that way. Sometimes they'll go and trash the phone, pick up another phone so that you can't track it.
I just wonder, knowing what I know about the use of, the rise of the use of criminal informants and stuff like that. I'm just curious if there might be more that hasn't ever been reported, that is now buried in some TBI investigative file about informant status. That's pure speculation. I'm not making any accusations on that end. I'm just knowing what I know about how the 13th District, the High Intensity Drug Task Force, the TBI, how they use existing addicts and small time criminals to fish around and try to set up other people. I just wonder if there might be some additional motivation for why he was so gung ho. Because and then
it could be. I mean, it could be that there's some sort of drug operation going on that prior to all this, and they were tracking these individuals because that they do that when they're involved in some sort of they may have had some sort of tracking device on a vehicle. They may just be tracking the phone. There's all sorts of techniques they could use to try to infiltrate this drug ring to see what's happening. And maybe they'd already done that, and then the homicide took place in the course of all this, and then they picked up on it, and then they were already on to this suspect that you're talking about, and then he starts moving on, going to different locations, and then the homicide occurs, and then basically everything just breaks loose.
Yeah.
And none of those methods you mentioned, Terry, require somebody to lose their crap and just start firing off into building. I don't know what would cause them to
this was
completely lose their mind.
Right. If they're tracking him, and that's the other thing. It's a good point, Daniel. The other thing is we know that they are tracking him because they tracked him to Smithville. And I get it that he's a danger to the public. You want to try to capture him if you can. I mean, that is important. I'm not trying to minimize that. You got him there. You don't want him to get away again because he is a danger to the public.
Right. But at what cost?
Exactly. That's the point. If you're putting other people's lives at risk, especially citizens, innocent citizens, let him go. There's another day to get him.
I'm still surprised, and I know it sounds futuristic, but Batman had these little slime trackers that he just put this real cool gun up and he went pew pew, and it like stuck some tar or whatever it was on the back of the car. A GPS chip is like this big now. Why? I don't understand why we aren't doing more of that. I understand that it's expensive, but if you've seen these sheriff's departments and these district attorneys' offices budgets, probably not that expensive, not compared to a Humvee.
So
it's not that expensive.
Go ahead, Daniel.
These devices aren't that expensive, really. I mean, they were years ago. They've come down quite a bit because technology has advanced so much, and it's so much easier to build these devices and to distribute them. The main thing is that you have to have a search warrant to place a tracker on a vehicle, and you got to go through the process of doing that. And you got to convince a judge, which is not that difficult. Depends on the law enforcement officer presenting it. If he's articulate enough and knows his business, he can convince a judge that why he believes that this person is involved in X, Y, and Z. But if I don't know about Warren County law enforcement. I don't know those guys. I'm not trying to demean them. But if they can't articulate to a judge, or the DA can't articulate to the judge, hey, we need a search warrant to put this tracker on there. There's already problems.
Mm-hmm.
So DA Stanford has been charged. He's out on bail for $10,000. In your professional experience, Mr. Hembree, how likely do you think this charge is to stick?
It's a good question. So there's a couple of possibilities that's going to happen here. So if this was an unintended consequence, in the indictment coming out of the grand jury, where Dunaway, the DA, takes the case to the grand jury thinking they may kill it, they end up indicting it. Now Dunaway has a little bit of a problem on his hand. He's got to figure out how he's going to get rid of this case. So the question now is how good, what is the relationship with Stanford and the DA's conference? Because the DA's conference, or the good old boys club, as I like to call it, will try to save him if they can. If he's not worth saving, they're going to let him hang out on the limb. And then, he may end up actually being convicted of this. But if I were a betting man, I'd say this is going to go dark pretty soon, meaning that this case is you're not going to hear much about it. They're going to drag it out for a couple of years. And when nobody's looking, they're going to dismiss the charges.
Or let him plea out to some misdemeanor with where he pays a fine and promises not to do it again. Scout's honor.
Possibly they would do that, but that would create some public attention if he's entering a plea. It's better just to let the case kind of die on the vine, so to speak, and, let it go dark, as I said. Because, in a couple of years, a lot of people are going to forget about this. There's going to be many, many other news cycles that take its place.
Mm-hmm.
Like yesterday, of course, it was very tragic that they had the school shooting in Wisconsin. So it kind of overshadowed the arrest of the DA because, you had the school shooting that was in the news network.
Well, we promise to keep everybody up to date on any advancements. There's actually some other interconnected cases. I should imagine that the case in Coffee County, where DA Stanford was the pro tem DA, that's probably going to have a hiccup in there now because it's hard to prosecute a case on official misconduct when you yourself are in an orange and white striped jumpsuit. We have another story that this one was much bigger in the news. This went multinational, and the memes from it were so sweet. But the Post Commission recommends decertifying former LaVergne police chief. Now, for those of you who were living under a rock in 2023, this is tied to the Maegan Hall, let's call it the kinky cop scandal, because when you read what came out and what finally went public today, you're going to flip. Headline, Post Commission recommends decertifying former LaVergne police chief. LaVergne, Tennessee, WKRN. It's a scandal that shook the quiet community of LaVergne. In 2023, 5 police officers were fired after a wide-ranging sex scandal. The officers were accused of having sex on duty, sending nude photos to each other, and lying about all of it. However, perhaps more shocking are the accusations levied against the former police chief. Investigators say former LaVergne police chief Burrel Chip Davis knew exactly what was going on and that he covered it up, which sounds a lot, that's very believable for Tennessee law enforcement. On Thursday, the Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission, the same people that told us that DA Stanford was not certified, recommended that Davis be decertified after reading back explicit text messages between Davis and another officer at the time of his scandal. Quick parental advisory here. This is not going to be family friendly. Chief Davis was aware of the sexual relationships between employees and did not notify HR or interact in any way to stop those relationships from happening. That is a quote. But as you're about to see, he did interact in another way. In January 2023, the city of LaVergne fired 5 officers after accusing them of having sex with each other. During Thursday's post-hearing, Davis claimed he was not involved and therefore shouldn't be decertified. Speaking of spell checks, look at that. Therefore. And it's all is either one, each other on and off duty, not one and off duty. So somebody who's okay with sending pictures. How does the chief who started looking at this? I'm trying to find. Okay. The investigative report talks about an exchange, a text exchange between you and Sergeant McGowan, where there was a photo of a black male foot inside Officer Hall's mouth. A post commissioner said that is kinky. Davis acknowledged the exchange. Quote, Sergeant McGowan responded, "She has a tight little expletive, though." And you replied, "Yep." The commissioner continued. "Is that true?" Davis said, "Yeah. But you don't understand. We've been friends for 16 years. All the texts weren't completely correct, and many of the messages were deleted." Just curious, do either one of you delete some of your messages to somebody?
I'm honestly just curious about what deleted messages would have made this make it okay. What context is missing from this?
Well, no, but if you're going to delete things, are you going to leave the picture of a foot in someone's mouth?
I mean, Well, it might have been necessary as part of an investigation or something. I just wonder how much text was deleted that where some regular average person would look at that and go, "Oh yeah, I can see why he would say that." That's cool.
So I want to get some professional opinions from Terry real fast, but I want to just finish off. This article does say finally that Davis is set to go before the full post commission for a final decision this Friday, which is going to be, I think, the 20th. Can you check me on that? But I think it's Friday the 20th.
Yeah, it is the 20th. Yeah.
So this is going to come out on Wednesday night. So guys, you still go there Friday if you want to hear it. If you want me to go to support the Patriot Punk Network and tell me, and I'll do what I can to show up. But
I bet he wishes he'd put his own foot in his mouth at this point.
Well, you know what? It looks like a foot in the mouth results in a boot in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little inside joke. You'll have to go back and browse my social media if you don't understand it. Let's just say Homeland Security does not like the phrase "put a boot in their ass." So, Terry, let me ask you a question. I guess this is like an advisory board or like the smaller branch of Post. They explained that the reason for the vote was that Davis is an officer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yep.
Can you kind of explain what that's like as an officer and how the police force and everything would use this? Why are they, if this was a consensual relationship outside of work duties, I would be a lot less apt to really care. Obviously, they're still working together. One's in a supervisory position. There's some stuff going on, but what are the professional standards for police officers when it comes to relationships and stuff?
Well, certainly you want to live, make sure that your personal life doesn't spill over into your professional life, which is exactly what's happening here, where you've got some relationships going. It's like you said, the relationships are going on outside of, the work hours, and it's not being brought into the department or, being brought into the arena of the other employees. Then, it's not that big a deal. But in this situation, you've got supervisors who are basically going to be making administrative decisions about these officers at some point, in their interactions. And it's hard to do that when you're involved in a personal relationship with that officer, which
I would imagine it'd be hard to do that even if you weren't in a personal relationship and there's a picture of this chick going around with some dude's foot in her mouth.
Right. When I'm talking about a personal relationship, I don't mean that it's an ongoing relationship. Obviously, this is just sporadic things here and there, but it's problematic because it's going on during duty hours. So you're obviously taken away from the services that you're trying to provide to the public because you're receiving other services. I'll leave it there. So.
What were you saying, Daniel?
Oh, you guys just need to understand. They've been friends for over 16 years. So, I mean, that makes it okay, obviously.
Well, I can understand if you've been friends with someone for 15, 16 years, I can understand cussing in a message and locker room talk, I think is how Donald Trump put it. But when it's about an employee, that if it comes out, you're in trouble.
In written format, no less.
Yeah.
Bro, these guys should be at least smart enough to understand that if you're going to say something like that, God forbid, I mean, the least you could do is make sure you don't write it down. Don't send it in a written format, especially in today's day and age.
Hot mess for this is a really hot mess for human resources. Because you can all sorts of. I don't mean to really get into all that, but I mean all sorts of problems are going to result from this. I mean, you're going to have probably some discriminatory issues that pop up. If somebody doesn't get promoted or if somebody does get promoted, I mean, it's going to be a nightmare as far as human resources.
During my training for my HR training, I do remember that one rule that said that you are allowed to sexually objectify fellow employees so long as you have been friends with the person for at least 16 years. So that checks out. We're good.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
I think that was on page 109 or something like
Yeah.
that of the
I must
DC.
have
No,
been on break there in that.
It was page 69, guys. Duh.
Oh man.
Okay.
So do you fully expect, because it seems like that the chief he knew it was going on, but I understand hiring law enforcement is difficult in today's environment. And I hate to sound cliche saying today's environment, but it's more difficult to hire a police officer in the post BLM days. And if they work well together, I can understand the difficult position management would be in. I've been in management off and on my whole life. And there's been times where I knew some employees were, probably doing something that they shouldn't, but it wasn't affecting the thing. They were hiding it from me appropriately enough, so I let it go on. And I wonder if maybe that's kind of what happened here. Do you think that on Friday they will vote to officially decertify him?
Yes. And mainly because of all the publicity. I mean, I would almost guarantee that there's been other incidents like this in law enforcement, and that has been brought before the post commission, and they made other decisions because someone that what didn't create a lot of media attention like this one did, or I got swept under the rug, or it's a good old boy slap on the back type of thing. Yeah, well, he did this, but he's still a good old boy. I mean, the thing that comes to mind, I know this is different, but Greg Etheridge comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
He's still a police officer, post-commissioned officer in the state of Tennessee, and he had $27,000 go missing from his evidence while he was chief of police. And he also failed to investigate.
He knew it was missing for a year, too, before it got turned in.
Correct.
Yeah.
He also failed to investigate a child abuse incident. He basically, what we reported in the media is that he was aware of it but didn't properly investigate it. I mean, this is coming from District Attorney Dunaway. He's talking about the failures of Chief Etheridge, and this man is still wearing a badge and carrying a gun, which to me is equally as bad as what's happened in LaVergne, if not worse. Because you're talking about people, you're talking about consenting adults there. Obviously, it's going on duty. You're talking about the sexual acts. That shouldn't be happening. But here's a man who basically allowed $27,000 walk out of the vault, evidence vault, and he just shrugs it off like, oh, well, I lost my pencil. I lost my pen. No big deal. And, he's still allowed to process evidence. He's still allowed to testify in criminal cases. That's problematic. That's going to be a huge problem for the Putnam County Sheriff's Department, when defense attorneys start calling Greg Etheridge to the stand. But back to the question of, are they going to get rid of or decommission this chief? Absolutely. They're going to decommission.
I feel like when I look, the more I've been doing this, the more I look into different law enforcement scandals, the more I realize why an expensive attorney can get you out of anything almost in Tennessee. And it's because if you have enough money to dig up all the records, almost everyone's going to make mistakes. But we touched on it a few weeks ago. The training in Tennessee is minimal. They don't spend very long on law. They probably don't get the best evidence training, warrant training, things like that. And it leaves so many opportunities for cases to be thrown out. I imagine that any piece of evidence that Greg Etheridge handles, a good attorney could scrutinize enough to create reasonable doubt in the mind of a jury member. I imagine,
absolutely, yeah.
I imagine that after the false statements to the police, any piece of evidence or statement that DA Stanford has ever taken from the previous story that we covered would also be able to be scrutinized to the point of reasonable doubt in the mind of a jury member. And it's just, I do have to commend LaVergne, because the way I understand it is somebody higher up there and possibly in the executive branch of government there found out about it, and they put their foot down and said, it's going to be a shit show, but it'll be more of a shit show if we don't handle it right now. As soon as we found out, if someone finds out we've been covering for it, then you would be then that person would have been the person answering questions about text messages with a black male foot in Maegan Hall's mouth. Now, I'm just curious, how do they know it's a male foot? Did they write their pronouns on their foot?
Yeah, that's interesting about how they would know, if it was male or female.
I think
but one of the things about post-commission is that, of course, it's basically made up of other police officers in the state. But, there are certainly prejudices that leak into the decisions that are made by post. You can just look at some of the decisions they made in the past. Again, I don't mean to go back and harp on Etheridge, but, Etheridge wasn't charged with taking the $27,000. No one can prove that he took that money. That's not what I'm saying, that he took the money. What I'm saying that he was responsible for that money when it went missing. And he just basically shrugged it off. He's like, oh, well, $27,000 is missing. We'll report it at some point and try to figure out where it went. When you have a nonchalant attitude like that in law enforcement, how much effort are you going to put into really solving a serious crime if you don't think that there's anything significant that would concern you about it, just like the missing money? It didn't seem like that was a very significant issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, guys. I was just playing around asking Grok to write me some jokes based on the context of that article. You're going to appreciate this. So,
okay.
I got 3 good ones. What's the new training at the police academy after the foot incident? Foot and mouth 101. When to spit, not swallow evidence. What's the new LaVergne PD motto? Putting our best foot forward or in our mouth.
And
how did the female officer explain the foot in her mouth? I was just trying to kickstart my career. Not bad. Not bad.
Good job, Grok. Good job, Grok. Okay, so the last story, once again, I just want to take this time to give a special shout out to our sponsors. It's because of them we were able to bring this show to you. midtandkirby.com, A State of Creative. Go check them out over on Facebook, midtandkirby.com. Get you a quick look at the best home care system on the market, 110 years in production, always made in America. And A State of Creative is the best place for you to get your gently used, refurbished, and impeccably reconditioned furniture, leather sofas, things like that. So we appreciate our sponsors. And now we've got another story to come into. And this is a campus safety scandal. And I sent it to you in Messenger, Daniel. This is a Patriot Punk Network exclusive. So shout out to them over at the Patriot Punk Network. That's us, for anyone who didn't already know that. And the TCAT crime numbers are being questioned. An instructor was threatened, and the president of the institution actually responded. So I'll save you guys reading it all to you. You can check that out at patriotpunknetwork.com/news. But the long and the short of it is that there is this act called the Cleary Act. And a young woman was raped and murdered at a college campus in the late 80s. And in 1990, the federal government passed a law that said you have to report the crime that happens on your campus. Or around your campus in a specific geographical location. That way, parents and students can make an appropriate decision. Well, TCAT Livingston, Tennessee College of Applied Technologies, has some impeccable crime numbers. Most of them are 0, and including the unfounded crimes for most years. And we spoke to a whistleblower that basically called Bollocks on all that. Said that he was, as an instructor, an adjunct instructor, he had a drawing of himself being assassinated taped to his desk, and that when he raised, then they found after they found the drawing, they found hidden homemade knives, and when he raised this concern and his fear with administration, he was told this was his trial by fire. When I questioned Cliff Wightman, the president of Tennessee College of Applied Technologies, he did not deny that interaction or event occurred, but according to their Cleary report, there is no such documentation. We are currently in the process of open record requesting and waiting on a response for the police reports. But this happened. And the more I hear, the more it sounds like this may not be the only crime encouraged not to be reported. You can check all those out at patriotpunknetwork.com, but I wanted to get Terry's impression because that is out there in the 13th Judicial District. And I know on good authority that the district attorney's office has been made aware of this incident. And I'm just kind of curious to get your opinion, Terry, on what might come of this.
Well, it's really a serious incident. People might say, well, what's the big deal? They're not reporting their crime statistics. Well, first of all, it's a federal law. They have to report the crime statistics. And also, the other thing that's important here is that there's a lot of people, students, parents, who are making decisions based on these Cleary reports about whether they want to go to a certain university because of crime rates or because of things that are happening in those particular areas. So when it's being withheld from the public, it's basically like, it's like buying a house. And this is not the best analogy. It's like buying a house that has termites. And you know it has termites, but you don't want to reveal that to the owner. But this is even worse because here you know that there are things that are happening, serious things that, could basically involve someone's personal safety. And you're hiding that, or you're failing to disclose that to the public and to the student body and even to the employees at these institutions. That's just wrong. And not only is it wrong from a standpoint of ethics, but, you got some liabilities involved in that. I think there's some criminal responsibility here too.
Yeah. I'm curious as to see what the behind the scenes evidence, the evidence that I believe exists, and that after speaking with Mr. Connor, the instructor, I feel that there's probably a lot more. There's probably text messages, emails, or something like that exist talking about these numbers. Now, I'm curious if you were still at the district attorney's office and this case and this accusation landed on your desk, what would be some of the possible things you would be looking at? Because Cleary is a federal crime, so obviously you couldn't investigate that, or you could, but you couldn't do anything about it. What state crimes are possible here?
So one that comes to mind almost immediately is like if you have the responsibility to report this information, basically rests with the department head. You got the Department of Safety who would collect a lot of this information, but if it's not being reported to them, or they're being told, don't write this up. For example, let's say that you have an assault that occurs on campus, and it's a sexual assault. But when it comes to be reported to the safety officer, or the president or somebody on the campus comes to and says, yeah, this is going to create a lot of bad publicity for the campus. Don't report this as a sexual assault. Just report it as a simple assault or maybe a minor stalking incident. So what you're doing at that point, you are falsifying information. You're basically falsifying an official document, which is a criminal offense. If you're doing it under the color of your employment, then you're committing official misconduct. So, and that's a felony. So if there's a department employee or an employee at the institution who is instructing someone not to report this or to change the information, falsifying documents, you got a couple of different crimes that are occurring right there. Those are state crimes.
What about students who, and this might sound like a petty example, but I'm trying to give an example that actually has damages. So a student goes to the college campus and they are assaulted. Maybe it's not very serious. Maybe they're just a victim of a car burglary, but they are the victim of some kind of crime. Though the school is not ultimately responsible because they were the victim of a random act of violence or a random act of crime. Is it possible that they could be liable, either civilly or criminally, for defrauding people? Because if people are making financial decisions and spending money with this institution based on these numbers, and again, allegedly, possibly have intentionally lied or manipulated these numbers to better favor them, would that constitute fraud?
Well, it would constitute fraud. And of course, there's a liability that's associated with that from the standpoint of, the person was received some sort of injury as a result of this fraud. Even if the fraud was not to a criminal level, and most fraud is, but now there are some instances of fraud that may not actually constitute a criminal act. It could be, an ethical violation, or it could be, where they failed to enforce a policy or something like that. That could be fraudulent in and of itself, but not necessarily criminal, but it would still be attached to the liability.
I'm curious. Do you think that a campus does zero? Because looking at their Cleary numbers, they have the only crimes reported way off campus or off campus. There's a domestic violence. On campus, there is one disciplinary referral. It's not even an arrest or something for drug abuse. I was told by the instructor that in his opinion, there's probably a lot more. And I have it on good authority that there's probably 3 or 4 more. And is there any situation in which this could genuinely be an accident, just in your speculation, Terry, that if it's true that there's 4 or 5 things missing, is it really likely that was an accident?
It doesn't seem like it would be accidental. It seems more like an intentional act, that you're basically withholding information because you don't want it reported in a certain fashion or labeled in a certain way. And if that is the case, then that would, in my opinion, rise to the level of criminal acts. And going back to the falsifying information and official misconduct because you're doing it under the color of law or the color of employment, you're doing this in an official capacity.
Whereas I'd like every instructor and every student or anybody that's been involved, maybe they were asked to lie on something and now they feel guilty about it. I'd love for them to come speak to me. What is the appropriate, path for them to take if they are trying to blow the whistle and report this? Do they send off one of those emails to one of those random forms and just cross their fingers and hope and wait? Or what should someone do if they maybe have more evidence that this is in fact going on?
So if they feel that, that the information is not, or has been underreported or been withheld, they could take it to the, I'm not sure that every college campus has I can't remember the exact title, but it's like the Title IX coordinator.
So the Title IX coordinator for this school is the vice president. I believe the lead Title IX coordinator is Jeffrey Slagle. Yes. And he was also made aware of this situation allegedly. And it's kind of like Dunaway's office, where if you, I filed a report for harassment, asking for an investigation, and I felt that I was discriminated against, but the person who you report that discrimination to just so happened to be the employee that I reported my complaint to in Dunaway's office. Is there anyone that you're aware, or any process or mechanism for them to go over their head?
Well, in that case, they could go to the Board of Regents. The state of Tennessee has a Board of Regents, and I think that they have a Title IX officer too, if I'm not mistaken about that. But certainly, you could go to they have a president and a vice president over the Board of Regents. You could send information to one of them, make them aware of it, and they can do an investigation. The Board of Regents can absolutely conduct an investigation into this.
That would, I know that there's a lot of people there that want that to happen. The interview, when you listen to the man speak, Daniel, what was the way you worded it? Did they really try to blame it on him for what happened? Is that?
I don't recall how I worded it exactly. It was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like the school is, trying to place the blame on anyone except themselves. And have you ever dealt with a situation like this before in law enforcement? There's a lot of colleges out in the 13th district. So,
I don't recall anything like this happening specifically like this. Years ago, before the Clery Act was enacted, I'm sure there was a lot of underreporting. I'm not even sure some college campuses kept reports about things that were happening on the campus they were supposed to. I remember when I started working in the Cookville Police Department, Tennessee Tech had, a police force. But a lot of times when something would happen on campus, they would handle it, or sometimes they would call us. It would depend on how serious it was. And then, of course, we went out there, talk about Cookville Police, we would actually file a report and do an investigation. And that's what would generally happen most of the time, is if it's something that the safety and security or the campus police feels like they cannot handle, they would turn it over to the jurisdiction where the campus lies. Basically, in this situation, it would be Livingston, I guess. I know they have the TCAT there. They have one in Crossville, and I think they have one in McMinnville. Depending on where.
They've got a lot of campuses, but important to note about this one, and I'm glad you said that, is that the president of this, of the TCAT Livingston campus, is also the president of the Crossville campus, which is in Cumberland County.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at their Clery numbers, they are also very low. And I would be curious, and I'm sure if anyone's investigating this, that they are also curious if there could be a trend. And that leads me to think if there's some kind of incentive, because you typically get the results that you incentivize.
Mm-hmm.
True. And if you have someone, and of course, I don't know who would be involved in this. It is odd that you have it happening at the Livingston campus and the Crossville campus, and you have the same administrator for both of those campuses. That's very odd.
For clarity, I don't know that it's happening at the Crossville campus. It's just a suspicion. I've heard some mumblings, but again, I don't have any whistleblowers from that campus yet. But if you would like to be one, you can reach out to us at tips@patriotpunknetwork.com. I just think that if
I would start with the safety and security coordinators for those campuses and say, what type of crimes are you having occur on campus, and what are you actually reporting? Maybe they've been told to withhold information by someone, and if that's the case, then again that criminal level starts to rise a little bit. Now you got official misconduct that's expanding out to other people. You're instructing them not to do things, and they may be acting on that instruction out of fear of reprisal or, some sort of retaliation in their employment. So this could really mushroom out a lot of different areas.
It sure could. I guess the last question that I have is, do you think that if any average citizens, regular Joe Blows who commit a crime, do you think that they would be treated the same way that the people we've discussed tonight have been treated?
No.
What do you think would be different?
Well, so for example, in the incident, I'll go back to the DA. If that had happened to me or you, we would have been arrested that night. It wouldn't have been taken before a grand jury. They would squall a warrant on us, and we would have been taken into custody immediately for endangering someone's life. So it certainly was handled differently. And as I said before, if this was a tactic that Dunaway is pulling, where he takes it to the grand jury to try to kill the case, and it backfired on him, and now he has to deal with an indictment. That'll eventually come out. We'll know if that was the case, and then that would obviously lead to believe that he received special treatment.
I also think that they would probably have charged. What I see a lot of the time with average people is that they get overcharged so that they can negotiate a plea deal afterward. So if it were in DA Stanford's or former DA Stanford's case, I guess would be appropriate.
But see, they didn't charge the other crimes. They didn't charge where he lied to the investigating officers. That's basically filing a false report where he said he had the post certification and he didn't have it.
Wait a minute. And I'm just curious, if you're wearing, a bulletproof vest and you tell a cop that you're a post certified law enforcement officer and you're not, is that not impersonating an officer?
Well, it is. You could certainly make a case about that. I mean, there's a lot of different crimes that could have been charged here, and they only landed on 2, I understand it. Which is very odd to me that they landed on these 2. And it's not necessarily odd. I know why they did it. It's because you've got, this lady and her children who were in the apartment where these bullets struck, which is a very serious incident. I mean, it could have been a tragedy that occurred with that. So that's what they were focused on. And that's my guess why the grand jury issued the indictment, because they were focused on that too. But what I'm saying is there's some other charges that could have been brought against Stanford that were not brought. And that in my opinion, was clearly a tactic that Dunaway was employing, that he didn't want to bring a mountain of charges down on him. He wanted to limit the charges to a couple things that they could deal with down the road when this eventually goes dark and they can do whatever they're going to do behind closed doors.
As well as I do, it's easier to make 1 or 2 charges go away than 10 or 12.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It sure is.
So, any follow-up questions or anything? We're going to try to make it a little short show. We know everyone's got a lot of Christmas stuff to start doing. It's the week before Christmas, but we just wanted to maintain our promise of 2 episodes a week. And we thought that since they're trying to throw all this stuff in right as everyone's basically clocking out for the year, we thought we would memorialize it in an official episode so that hopefully all of this drama doesn't die on the vine or put a foot in their mouth. So, Mr. Hembree, we appreciate it. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
So one other thing, going back to the clearing reports, if there are people who want to report things that's happened to them, I'll do some research on this and I'll provide it to you, and you can put the link out there. We can give them an opportunity to report what they feel is necessary to brought to the attention of the people who need to know.
Awesome. I would greatly appreciate that. And if you are someone who knows about corruption or knows that something crazy and wild is going on, help us out. Send me the information. And if you're willing to help us request records and things like that, that's always a benefit too. We can't do this alone. But if we don't all stand together, then who I call the chosen sperm are going to, they're going to take over and they're going to win. And we just can't let that happen. So, well, we appreciate you joining us, Terry. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And if I don't talk to you before then, though, I'm sure I will. I hope you and your family have a fantastic and Merry Christmas.
Well, thanks for having me. Same to you, Daniel. Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year as well.
Yes, sir. Likewise.
All right. Thank you so much, Terry. And I'll holler at you later.
All right.
Well, Daniel,
right.
what did you think about that?
Okay. Think about what now?
What did you think about that? Sorry, we're all playing magical button pushes here. Do you think that we're going to see DA Stanford spend a long time in jail?
No, not at all. If he serves any time at all. It's just too I don't know. I have no faith in the system at all as it is. And we've seen these guys get away with much worse than this. So I don't have any faith that he's actually going to be held accountable. But if anybody watching wants to hit that like button, 1 like equals 1 corrupt politician held accountable.
Yes. Smash that like button, but only do it once, because if you hit it twice, it'll unlike it. Okay. We need the numbers to go up, not down. The one thing that I do want to say to counteract is I don't have a lot of faith in the system by itself, but I think there's an important part of the system that has been missing for a long time, and that is civic engagement and individual involvement.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people that apply pressure, the mayor of Smithville was going out and calling out DA Stanford publicly, using his platform to not let it go away. That probably contributed. News Channel 5 and myself were both looking for post-commission reports. I think that with more civic engagement, the system can work better, because I think a major part of that system is I don't want to refer to them as the angry mob with pitchforks crowd, but it's knowing that those people are there and being accountable to them.
Well, it's just the fact that once, one of the things that they said is having the freedom is going to require eternal vigilance, and people just aren't vigilant. They don't have any incentive to be vigilant, at least that they're aware of. All the power seems to be on one side. I won't hold my breath until I can see some actual change happen. Hopefully within the next, decade or so, things do start to change because of the fact that everything will be more local, and people will have no choice but to be confronted with what's going on in their local stages. So I'm hopeful, but I'm going to hold my breath.
Yeah. Well, don't hold it for too long, because you'll turn blue. Kind of like the emotional support donkey. Where can people find you if they want to follow you and hear some more of your witty banter?
Oh, if you want to follow me over at Unframe of Mind on all social media platforms, I have a good time over there. I did over on X is where I do have my juicy stuff. There was a tweet that I made last night. I think, I can't remember exactly. I think it was last night. Good Lord, if I could click the buttons, that'd be wonderful. I'm terrible at this, apparently, but anyway, I do make some stuff over there, and it's that's where I do my saucy stuff. So check that out.
Make sure you follow him. The one other last thing I'm going to ask everyone to do, I know if you've made it this far in the video, hang with me for just a little longer. Christmas Day, we are currently working on putting together scheduled videos where you will be able to have some entertainment whenever there's some downtime. We know that you're going to be spending your time with family and friends, and if you aren't, then try to reach out to us, find someone to spend the day with. But for those times when you're bored, we are going to have some of our greatest hits, handing out brown shirts to mask police, the Let's Go Brandon Freedom Rally with Bryson Gray, Forgiato Blow, and all of those guys. And some of the times we got kicked out of places for maybe not following all the rules. So be sure to check that out. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and sign up for our newsletter at patriotpunknetwork.com. As always, we appreciate you watching, and never mind the bollocks and watch the Patriot Punkcast.